The first operator you need to stop playing in Rainbow Six Siege is Thorn. I don't know why you play Thorn at all. Really, there's no reason to. If you want to play somebody with a good gadget that brings a deployable shield with fun to use weapons, you could just play Ela or play Warden. Those two abilities are both better than Thorn's ability, they arguably bring better weapons, and they still bring the deployable shield that you're probably using Thorn to bring anyways. There is no excuse to bring Thorn pretty much ever unless you're pairing her up with like a Frostmat or something, and even then, it's not even going to work half of the time. Thorn is one of the most useless operators in the entire game because there's not a single thing that she brings that other people can't bring, and them bring more. Her gun is fun because it's a 50 cal SMG, meaning you can do a lot of soft destruction with it. But that's just the thing. You can also do a lot of soft destruction on other operators like, let's say, Warden, and still bring a better ability and a deployable shield. Also, you don't have an ACOG on that gun, whereas you do have other ACOGs on other operators. Echo, for example, is a great example. He brings a better gun with an ACOG and a deployable shield and a better ability. A better version of Thorn in every single way. Even if you wanted a proximity-based trap, you could bring that on Ela and still bring everything that Thorn brings, but even better. So Thorn just has zero place because honestly, she's just really weak, and her ability and guns are both just terrible. Now that was just one out of 10 different operators that you need to stop playing in Rainbow Six Siege. Now you might have seen that one coming, but one that you might not have seen coming on this list is the next operator, which is Sentry. Now I do think Striker on attack has a place, because you're able to bring EMPs and hard breaching charges all in one operator. Not to mention you have an ACOG on the M4, which is a very good assault rifle, so there's definitely a place for the attacking recruit. But the defending recruit, Sentry, is a little bit different. You see, defending secondary utility is just not as powerful as attacking secondary utility. It just isn't. Sure, a nitro cell, maybe a deployable shield is pretty nice, but the fact of the matter is you know guaranteed most of the time that your teammates are going to bring these things. You could also bring all the secondary utility that you'd want on a different operator and bring more utility, right? Also, Sentry's gun just kind of sucks. The commando is okay, but not really as good as some of the other defending options. The reason that Striker is better than Sentry is because the combination of having two different attacking secondary utilities is a lot more powerful than any sort of combination that you can make for defense. For example, having hard breaching charges and EMPs on one operator is great because you can open a wall completely by yourself. Whereas on defense, having the two combination of those secondary utilities is not really that useful. There's not a single combination on defense like there is on attack that is game breaking that can't be done by some other operator, which makes Sentry, compared to Striker, pretty useless. There was the one thing where it's like, oh yeah, you can bring prox alarms and a nitro cell, or a BP and a nitro cell, but if you wanted to do that, you can bring Valkyrie and bring more utility and arguably a better gun. So there is literally 0 point to bringing Sentry ever, which, just like with Thorn, is the reason that you need to stop playing this operator. Now, as we go on in this list, you're going to start to see a theme, that if an operator can't do something that a lot of other operators can, or their job is just done better by other people, that they're going to be on this list. One person that's not really true for, though, is the next operator on this list, Amaru. Amaru, I will agree, does have a unique role on the attack that really just can't be filled by any other operator. You're able to go up hatches as an attacker, you're able to repel fast and take space very quickly, and she does have a good loadout. Those are all things that I will give to Amaru. Here's the thing, as much as she is unique, she isn't all that useful. I'll give you an example. Sure, Blackbeard can protect his head from bullets, and that's something that is unique, but it's never really that useful, so you can have an ability that's unique that isn't done by anybody else and still be a useless operator. But don't worry, we'll go over Blackbeard later. For now though, Amaru does have a unique spot in the fact that you can do 5-stack strats with her, but for the average solo queue player, that's just not the case. And even if you do have some crazy 5-stack strat with her, it's still a 50-50 shot that Amaru is even going to work. You have to have information for her to be useful. You have to have good gun skill for her to be useful. You have to be stratting, and even then, with all of those things combined, you could be the best player in the world, and there's still a 50-50 shot whether or not the strat works, like I said. And that's just not really a chance that you want to be taking. You want to be at an advantage at every single possible outcome. You know, if you have a good teammate that has EMPs or that is playing Thatcher, if you're playing Ace or Thermite, that wall is going to get open 100% of the time. That is a certainty. You also know on an operator like Rook that if you put down his armor, your utility is not going to go to waste. Even if it's not all that useful, you know for a fact that it's going to get used up entirely. Amaru is just not really like that. you'll use maybe 2, mostly 1 set of Amaru charges per round, and even then, it's putting you at a lot of risk compared to other operators. So the risk to reward ratio is not favorable enough to you for Amaru to ever be worth it. And if you're running her because you want to entry frag into it quickly, I recommend you play somebody like Ashe who can do that, but even better and more reliably. Speaking of operators that can go up hatches and is meant for fragging, let's talk about the next operator on this list, which is Oryx. Now you might be saying to yourself, well, I play Oryx because I want to counter shields. Here's the thing, that works up until about Emerald. After that, all a shield player has to do is dodge your Oryx dash, and this is very, very easy to do. The only scenario where you're not going to be able to avoid an Oryx dash is if an Oryx is in a corner and you didn't drone him and he comes and surprises you. But even then, if you just drone your corners, this isn't an issue. Also, if there are players around the shield player, the second Oryx dashes the shield player, he's going to get gunned down by your other teammates. Meaning that if you're playing with your teammates like a good shield player should be, Oryx dash is pretty useless against most shield players. The only time it's even useful is against an extended Monty. But again, you have to be not droned, you have to make sure that they're not around a single teammate, which is going to be rare in higher lobbies, and even then, a Monty can still unextend and just dodge you. So a good shield player will not get countered by Oryx, making Oryx not even that good for shields. So if you're not going to play Oryx for shields, what are you really playing him for? Sure, it's cool that he can go up hatches, but typically if there's a hatch, there's a staircase right next to it that you can take instead. Going up a hatch also makes a lot of sound, whereas slow walking up a staircase makes a lot less sound. He also doesn't bring an ACOG, which is very powerful on the defense, so that's another thing that he's just missing entirely from the defense. I will say his gun is pretty good, and bringing a bailiff to be able to pop hatches or make site setup is pretty cool too. But beyond that, he doesn't really do all that much. And somebody else that does that, but it brings way better utility, would be somebody like Fenrir. So there's really no place to play Oryx at all, ever. If you want to play a good shield counter, play Legion, play Ella, play anybody with impacts, or just play with your teammates. Oryx just doesn't really have a place. And like many others on this list, that is why you just need to stop playing him. Somebody else that you probably should just stop playing is Thunderbird. Now, to be honest, Thunderbird isn't necessarily a bad operator. She has an okay gun, she has an okay ability, and she has a nice secondary SMG. The only reason that people think that she is bad is because there are just better options than her. So I'm not saying she's necessarily like a terrible, terrible operator, but if there are better options to run than her, you really should just never be playing her. That's why even though her ability isn't technically bad, myself included and other content creators tend to put her in F tier in the operator section of operators you should not be playing ever at all. I mean, think about it. You put down 3 Kona stations that heal for way less than a Doc stim does. Not only that, but healing is on a cooldown, whereas with Doc, you can just reload your healing stim. Not only that, but you bring a worse loadout than Doc, and not only that, but you actually have to go to the healing station, whereas the Doc can come to you, and you don't have to expose yourself or give up space to just get a heal that isn't even your full health bar. So because Doc exists, Thunderbird just really isn't worth it. It's not really that Thunderbird has a bad piece of utility, although to be honest, she kind of does. It's just that there's somebody that totally outshines her in every single possible way ever. So it's really short and simple. Just don't play Thunderbird. Somebody else that you shouldn't play just because they have slightly better variants is the next operator on this list, which is Tachanka. I think Tachanka is slightly overhated because you can situationally have good strats with him if you know lineups, but that's just the thing. You have to know lineups. If you're playing Goyo or if you're playing Smoke, you don't need to have lineups. You can just toss them wherever you want to go. A great example is the basement of Bank. There are certain lineups that you can do to deny the default plant and deny it the entire round due to the fact that Tachanka just has the most amount of area denial in one operator compared to people like Goyo or Smoke. But other than that, Tachanka doesn't really have much else. Smoke and Goyo's area denial are both bigger than Tachanka's, they last longer, they do more damage, so it just never really makes sense to play Tachanka. You also have to have a launcher out, which exposes you quite a bit. You have to reload that launcher, which takes a lot of time and exposes you even more, and if you want to be able to set up sight with Tachanka, which is one of the many benefits of you playing the operator in the first place, you don't get to have gunfights that are as fair as you would if you were to just bring the SMG. And if you're just going to do that, you might as well play a different operator, meaning that Tachanka just doesn't really fit well anywhere. It's the same case with Amaru, where it's like, yeah, you can have a situational use with the operator, but for the majority of players, it's just not going to be the case. So I don't recommend that you play Tachanka, and if you are, just pick up Smoke instead, and you'll have a much better time. Now, just like Tachanka has his slight uses, this next operator also has their slight uses, but most of the time is just never really a good pick. And that is Callie. Now, like I said, Callie does have her situational uses. If Thatcher is banned, if you need to get a lot of castle barricades open, or if you want to sit in ruins of coastline and just have some fun, whatever it may be, Callie can be useful sometimes. but even in all of those scenarios, you don't necessarily need to be playing her. For example, if you want to get a bunch of castles open, just bring Zofia, just bring Ashe, just bring Flores, just bring Sledge, or even bring Hibana. Then you'll have a normal weapon with even better abilities, even better secondary utilities, and you won't be forcing yourself to take close range gunfights with a sniper rifle. Not only this, but if you're trying to get a wall open and you have a Kali Lance on that wall, it is going to destroy any single hard breach on that wall as well, which really sucks. If you're trying to stop somebody from Cade tricking or bandit tricking while 2 aces are on the wall and you put a Kali Lance on the wall, it's gonna get those 2 ace charges off, which makes Kali way more situational than I think she should be. If they took that feature out, she probably wouldn't be in this video. However, this isn't actually the case, which makes me want to put her in. Even in those situational uses, where you're not going to destroy your teammate's utility, you know you can take the gunfights reliably, you're in a situation where it makes sense, and you're going to get utility because Maverick and Thatcher are banned, there are still better options, because EMP grenades exist, which can actually do her job, but easier, and you get to bring a better ability, a better gun, and better secondary utility as well. So there really is no point to playing Kali unless you just want to play the sniper. Somebody else who was honestly the exact same way is the only other sniper attacker in the entire game, which is Glaz. Now, just like Kali, there can be some situational uses for Glaz. If maybe you're doing a Mav Glaz strat and you want to use smokes to make it to where your Mav is safe Maving the wall, but you can get some kills along the way. Or maybe you know that you're going to go for a smoke plant and you want to be able to frag out. It doesn't matter, there are some scenarios where Glaz is playable. And unlike all of the other operators I've talked about on this list, I'm not going to sit here and say that even in those scenarios there's a better operator, because honestly, that's not true. There's nobody else that's able to make Maverick being played safer and get kills at the same time than Glaz. There's nobody that's better at getting kills through smokes and flashes when you're doing a fast plant than Glaz. I'm sure you could say that maybe Blitz is better at it, but honestly, there are uses where Glaz is useful. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that there's not. However, unless you're a smart player, and you have good aim, and you have competent teammates, Glaz is not going to be useful. So, for a video that is talking about solo queue players, stop playing Glaz. But if you're in a 5-stack and you're watching this video, then disregard this operator placement. But for my solo queue players, who I'm targeting this video towards, don't play Glaz. There's really no reason unless you just want to have fun with a sniper, just like Kali, which I'll admit I do from time to time, but unless you're in a scenario where that makes sense or you're just trying to do that, you really shouldn't be playing this operator because there are just better operators to bring. Not to mention, if your teammates aren't bringing smokes, you only get to use your ability twice in the round if you're even bringing smokes, which makes him just really not that good. Speaking of smoke operators, the next operator that I'm sure everybody was expecting to see on this list is Sens. My issue with Sens doesn't lie necessarily in their gadget being bad or their gadget having too many counters, because I do think their gadget is good. It's more of the thing like Thunderbird, where it's like you could just bring smoke grenades and do what Sens does. So really, there is no point to ever bring Sens except for some very, very niche scenarios. For example, why would I want to throw a Sens wall at a choke point where I want to throw a smoke grenade if it's just going to bounce everywhere and go crazy and maybe get in my way, or maybe not even work and get countered by explosives, when I could just bring a smoke grenade and smoke it off and not have to worry about any of that, and bring another piece of utility that I wouldn't have been able to bring if I brought Sens. Because that's the thing, not only is Sens' smoke worse than a normal smoke, but because you're picking Sens, you don't have an actual operator ability other than those smokes. Whereas if you played somebody like Thermite, you would have the ability to smoke that off and get a wall open. Whereas Sens, you just smoke it off and that's your entire ability, and you don't even do it reliably, and you have too many counters. It just does not make sense. No pun intended. But with that out of the way, it's time to go over the final operator of this video that I think you really need to stop playing, and this one might be a little bit of a shocker to you, and that is Sledge. Now, I'm not sitting here saying that Sledge is as bad as operators like Tachanka, Sens, or Thunderbird. That's not what I'm saying. But I think you should stop playing Sledge, and there's a big reason why. Sledge used to be people's go-to because he was a reliable operator. He could do a lot as one person, which is why he was not only a reliable operator to most, but specifically a reliable operator for solo queue players. He was reliable because he had frag grenades, which at the time were a little bit overpowered because you could cook them, meaning that you could get up to 2 free kills through floors with information. He was also one of the few attackers with an ACOG, because back then not all attackers had ACOGs, and he wasn't a 3 armor, meaning that making vert with him was increasingly easier because you could make more vert faster and you didn't have to worry about nitro cells as much because you could run away from them. He also had the SMG-11, which was a great secondary SMG, which allowed him to have more killing potential, just like the frag grenades did. And because operators like Flores and other soft destruction operators weren't out, or at least at their peak yet, Sledge was a great operator. But all of the things that I just talked about are no longer true. Frag grenades you can't cook anymore, which takes out the lethality of the operator. Sure, you can destroy bulletproof utility, but so can his sledgehammer, so it's not really that useful. He also doesn't have the secondary SMG anymore, meaning that a lot of his kill potential has gone away. Also, every single attacker has an ACOG now, meaning that his kill potential is not as valuable as other operators. He's also a 3 armor, which makes vert pretty slow, and if they have a nitro cell and they nitro you where you just made vert, a lot of the times you're just not going to escape because you're just too slow. Because of this and operators like Ram being in the game and Buck being in the game, it doesn't make sense to play Sledge. Ram can do what Buck does, but safer, more reliably, with better weapons, and with better secondary utility. Buck can do what he does faster, from multiple levels, from below, with flash grenades, and arguably with a better weapon. So at no point, honestly, does it make sense to play Sledge. Ever. But really quickly, before I end the video, I want to go over 2 honorable mentions that you probably were expecting on this list, but didn't quite make the cut. The first of which is Cav. My issue with saying that you shouldn't play Cav, in my opinion, is that Cav is actually kind of situationally good. The only issue with her, really, is that she has a bad primary gun. If she had, let's say, the R4C on defense, everybody would be playing her. Because not only would she have that, but she'd have impacts and the ability to interrogate people and go for flanks, which would make her a very well-balanced roamer. And because of the playstyle of people being rushes right now, going for flanks is becoming increasingly more valuable. She also has impacts to deal with flanks as well, so she's actually kind of a good roamer, especially in those lower ranks. And because the majority of people that watch my videos are low ranks, I honestly can't in my right mind tell you not to play Cav. I do think she's still a bad operator overall that is not going to teach you how to play the game as much as you should, which is why I put her in the honorable mention list, but not quite in the top 10. The second and final honorable mention that I'll go over in this video as well is Blackbeard. The reason that I don't want to put Blackbeard on this list is because he's actually getting a rework next season. I for one think the Blackbeard rework is probably going to make him better than he is right now, because when you've hit rock bottom, the only place you can go is up. And because if he's really good or he's really bad, it doesn't even matter. I wouldn't reliably be able to put him on this list because I just can't tell the future, and that wouldn't be fair. But with that out of the way, that's it for today's video. My name's Alka. Check out this next video, and I hope to see you there. Later.